This all started the night my girlfriend dumped me on Valentine's Day. The bad thing is that she lives right across the street from me. Anyway, with no date, I visited the deep web for about an hour. Then I went on a discussion forum. I decided to leave her address in there with the title of "Visit if you want to get time." Nobody responded to it, so I got off the laptop and played PUBG. About 2 hours after I started, I got bored, so I went back to the discussion board and saw a few replies. It was 27 replies from the same person, and it asked, "Are you home?" I didn't think much of it, and I got off my laptop again and decided to play a prank and order some pizza to my ex-girlfriend's house. About 45 minutes later, I see a car pull up with no lights on. At this time it's about 8 p.m, so it's pretty dark now. I thought to myself that it's weird. Anyway, the car parked and a man in all black got out and began walking to her door, but he didn't have any pizza. I thought that was really weird, so at that point I walked away from my window because she would be able to see me when she opened her door, and it would be pretty obvious that I had played the prank. When I came back to the window, I saw something that made my blood boil to the fullest. The man was dragging her down her front stairs and she was kicking and screaming. I then opened my window and yelled for him to stop, and then ran down the stairs to go out and help her. But by the time I got outside, he was in the car with her. I jumped in front of the car in order to prevent him from going, but he hit me and sped off with her inside. I laid there in pain until the pizza man actually showed up. He called the cops, and I never told anyone I provided her address. But at the same time, that person replied and said, "Thank you," in the post. I can't tell anyone about this, because I don't know what will happen to me. But since that day, no one has seen my ex-girlfriend, and I will never go back on the dark web. This happened to me when I was 10. I grew up in a military family and lived in the Middle East for a significant portion of my life. Because of this, we frequently traveled to different countries because of the low cost and proximity. On this particular vacation, we flew into Cairo, Egypt, the kidnapping capital of the world at that point in time, for a long weekend. We only lived about 2 to 3 hours away, and it was a late night, and we were staying at the Marriott Hotel, which had a taxi/shuttle service that was supposed to pick us up. For some reason, our driver never showed, so we were forced to find regular taxis to take us there, which took forever that late at night. We finally found one that was offering us a pretty good deal. They don't run by meters, instead they just give you flat rates that they choose, and headed towards the hotel. Out of nowhere, another taxi basically T-bones us in the middle of the road, causing us to stop. There aren't really defined roads in a lot of Arab places, so it isn't really that surprising that we got hit. In Arab nature, the true drivers get out of their car and start yelling at each other, and that it was each other's fault, and looking like they were going to throw hands. Eventually they got back into their respective taxis and parted ways. My family and I were completely taken aback. We had been in Egypt for less than 2 hours and were already having quite the adventure. We finally got to the hotel exhausted. It must have been 3 a.m. at this point, and our driver helped us get our bags out and get settled, and told us that he felt so bad about the car accident that he offered to pick us up the next morning and take us to the Great Pyramids, which was on our agenda for a super cheap rate. My parents agreed and decided on a time for him to come, though I can't remember when. Fast forward to the next morning. Everyone is ready for the day, excited to see how crazy it was going to be. Our driver was outside waiting for us, leaning against the car like someone in an old movie, right when he said he'd be there. I'm a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl that had a deep tan at the time, and being in Egypt, that was a rare sight. When the driver saw me in the daylight, he gave me the creepiest, most unsettling look that sent chills down my spine even as a 10-year-old. I knew something wasn't right with him. Nonetheless, we got into his taxi and headed towards the pyramids. He continued to try and talk to me and joke around with me the whole ride, something I found to be extremely creepy and bold since both of my parents were in the car. We get super close, and there's an entrance that people can go through and walk the long distance to the pyramids. And there is an entrance taxis can use to go through. You have to pay to see them, strange but true, and our driver keeps making jokes about my blonde hair and blue eyes, and bringing up that he could get me into the pyramids for free, so my parents wouldn't even have to pay the extra ticket price. We laughed it off, and my parents paid him and said thank you, and began to exit the taxi. I don't remember how it happened, but at some point after I got out of the car, he did too, and directed me towards his trunk. I was confused and thought we had forgotten something, so I stayed behind as my parents walked towards the gate to get whatever I thought we had left. The driver pops the trunk, and there wasn't anything in there. He grabbed my arm and put a hand over my back, trying to push me into the trunk, and said, "I'm getting you in for free," over and over again, as I resisted. Naturally, I freaked out and screamed out to my mum and dad at the top of my lungs, terrified. When they heard me and noticed I wasn't behind them, they started sprinting back to the car. When the driver heard me scream, he immediately let go of me, closed the trunk, and drove away, just as my parents started to run to me. I was crying my eyes out, terrified out of my mind, knowing that an Arab taxi driver tried to put me in his trunk and drove away the second I screamed for help. It's scary to think what could have happened if he'd been stronger and more prepared, or faster. He's the reason I'm still terrified of taxis, Ubers, lifts, and of any car service of that nature. When I was 8, my family decided to take a summer vacation and take us to a big famous water park a couple of hours away from home. It was me, my older sister who was 11 at the time, and my little sister who was 5, and my uncle who is paraplegic, and his girlfriend. We get to the water park, and my uncle and his girlfriend end up staying at the cabinas at the very entrance of the water park, due to the fact it was the only place with shade, and he had no intentions of getting in the water with his wheelchair. So they let us go off on our own all day. Big mistake. Since there were only either single or double person tubes, my older sister decided to get on one with my younger sister and let me go on one alone, but just hold on to theirs. And that worked for a little while, but we got to the lazy river that went around the whole park, and at the end of the river, they made it like very fast and crazy with waves crashing into you and stuff. I ended up letting go of their tube and flipping out of mine. By the time I even realized I had lost them, I thought it was no big deal, and that I would just find them soon enough again. So, I'm trying to get back onto my tube, and for some reason I just can't do it. A man notices me struggling and decides to come and assist me. I finally get in and thank him and try to float away, but he hasn't let go of my tube. Instead, he starts talking with me and asking me why I'm alone. I explain that I lost my sisters, and he suggests that he gets on the tube with me because he doesn't want me to get lost or drown. I say, okay, and we get on a tube together. He starts forcing me to ride all the slides with him, and talks to me about how his hotel room is not that far, and he has a whole bunch of toys I would love to play with. I actually started getting really interested, because I don't have many toys, and the ones I do have are broken from my sister's. He says that we can get on one last slide, and we can head over there after. I agree. While waiting in line, he starts acting really giddy and weird. He keeps swimming under our tube and would play with my feet and legs, and told me they were pretty. There was a young couple behind us who was watching all of this unfold, and I guess they could see the discomfort in my face, because they tapped on my shoulder and asked if I was okay, and if I knew the man. He tried answering for me, but they cut him off and said they were talking to me. I reassured them that I was okay, but it was seeing the look on their face that made something click in my head, and say that whatever was going on with this man was not okay. Once we got off the slide, I told him that I had to go, and once we got to the opening of the river, I wanted to just get on a single tube by myself, because I needed to find my sisters. He tells me that I can't do that, and he needs to watch me, so I can't leave him. As soon as he said that, this fear just came over me, and I ducked out of the tube and started swimming. When I looked back, he was right on my tail swimming after me. I ended up swimming to the entrance of the river and got on a single tube which he ended up grabbing and flipping me out of, saying I needed to get on a double tube with him. I did not feel safe anymore, so I ended up running out and running to my uncle and his girlfriend. I didn't tell them what happened, just that I got tired of being in the water. After sitting there for a while, I saw no signs of the man, and thankfully, my sisters made it back to the cabine safe and sound as well, and we all left together.